You know what? I'm gonna look at the spells briefly here. Arcane, Divine, Primal. Okay, Primal. If this wording is being added, I don't know if this was previous. I don't remember ever seeing this. I think that is great. Because previously, somebody's welcome to correct me. Druid spells were usually either arcane or divine. I will be curious to see if spells are shared between, say, druid and wizard. If the wizard casts them differently than the druid. But yeah, this primal idea I think is a really good distinction. I don't know if that was the case in yeah. Some spells are in. Some spells are instead from a class. Okay. The source of a spell is noted in parentheses. The main sources are Arcane, Divine, Primal. Some spells are instead from a class such as source. Okay, if you read this on its own, it's weird that there's a paragraph space here. That's painful grammar from what my knowledge of the English language is, which, as I've joked, English is terrible. But that doesn't. You wouldn't start a paragraph with some are instead from a class. Like that doesn't. There needs to be no space here. I think I know why they did it was to kind of emphasize the two, but this looks like a new paragraph and a new idea. So I think what they're saying, and I like this if this is the case, they've divided things into Arcane, Divine, Primal, and then class specific. I like that because then you don't need 5 spell lists and then a reference to other things. You can have, here are your arcane spells, here are your divine, here are your primal. If you are a class that has access to the divine, you have access to all of these. If you are a class that has access to primal, you have access to all these. If you have arcane, you have access to all these, rather than having, you have access to the wizard spell list, as long as, and then having some caveats and stuff on it, or like I know for what was it, Divine Soul Sorcerer, it was like, yeah, you can get spells from both the wizard or the cleric spell list. So they were often doing basically this, where there would be cleric and druid, and those spell lists, they had like very mild overlap, but for the most part they were completely separate. So just having, hey, these spells are one of 3 lists, you have access to them based on it, and then your class may open up more or let you dip into stuff that is on a list that doesn't normally come with it. If that is actually how, if I'm interpreting that correctly, that's awesome. That's really good. I have a suspicion the reason they included the arcane list and not the others this time around is we have sorcerer, warlock, and wizard in the playtest, so they don't need to include the divine and the primal, because I'm guessing divine is going to be your paladin cleric spell list, and then primal your druid ranger, which then, yeah, like I like this idea. I think this is going to clean things up quite a bit in terms of organization of the book. I think in this particular document, from what I've heard, it doesn't clean it up all that well, but we'll get to that. But I do like this idea of, let's have 3 main spell lists, and then here are spells specifically for specific classes. That's great. Arcane spell draws, multiverse, sorcerers, wizards, and warlocks, not that order, are among those who harness this. Arcane spells, table, these provide the spell level name, school of magic, also indicates whether it has a ritual tag. Okay, so yeah, and then it has the whole list. Yeah, again, I like this idea. I think this will clean up a lot of what do I have available to me, because that has always been a. I'm sure another game has made this work better, but I know in fifth ed it was always just okay. Pathfinder ones was a very similar mess. So there's probably been a few RPGs that have fixed this issue. But this is, I think this is a really good solution for clearing some of this up. So good on them. I think that's one of the best changes I've seen so far. But again, this is why this stuff is not compatible with, like you can't make a OG fifth ed cleric and then just use this stuff's when this stuff's officially released. It probably won't be able to pick and choose from both books. You got to pick from one. I would be curious. This will be where things get a little wonky and interesting. I'm going to assume if you make a original 5th ed wizard, follows all the rules of the 5th ed wizard rather than the 5.5 or however they end up distinguishing the two, or if they don't, like I said, that'll cause even more problems, so I hope they do. And you take a spell that was revised in this edition, do you get, or do you have to use the new version, or do you have to use the old version? Because, yeah, the class feature stuff and what spells you have available, that will be dictated by which path you choose when you first create the character. But, for example, Dancing Lights here has the asterisk that says that it has changed. Does that mean... does that mean Dancing Lights in... the original book is what you have to use because you made an original book character, or do you have to use this one? Is that going to be the DM's discretion? If a spell School of Magic is different, it appears. So I don't know if they actually changed this spell or if it's the exact same. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be going through too many of these. Yeah, so this is exactly what I mean here, though. This is really good. I like this. The Bard spells would have ended up on the Arcane list because they're an Arcane caster, but Vicious Mockery and Dissonant Whispers aren't considered a wizard spell. So they're going to be a Bard specific spell. Unless, like, a wizard has something, I haven't got to wizard yet, where they can, like, pull from a different class's spell list. That is a possibility. Yeah, I like these general changes. I haven't looked at any of the spells yet. There's a crap ton of them in here. Spell updates. New spells. Okay. So, yeah, I don't have to look through this whole list. I have to keep reminding myself that this isn't just a list of changes. This is playtest material. So they had to include the entire Arcane spell list so that if somebody makes a wizard, they're not going back and forth between multiple resources that may or may not work, and cause their own types of confusion. So we have new spells, 11 new spells here, each one connected to different features. Okay, so the new spells they have are the class features. I've heard about this. This might be why I need to look at the classes before I bother with the spells. Chaos Bolt. The spell has been moved from... Okay, so yeah, it's pulled from Xanathar's. That's fine. Oh, and they get it as a bonus spell. This is... I've heard about this change. I know some multi-class theory crafters are going to hate this change, but having Eldritch Blast level with Warlock versus how most cantrips level with the player, it sucks a little bit for very specific crazy builds and things like that, but generally I think it's fine. It's going to more so, though, make Eldritch Blast the spell to have as a Warlock. So we'll see how that goes. Hex, the spell can deal its extra damage only once per turn, and all Warlocks get it as a bonus spell. This was a fairly controversial, like, did they nerf Hex? Yes and no from what I've heard, but I think what I've heard tell is that Hex is going to end up being a more centric, like class-centric spell for Warlocks, but can be used by some other classes. Yeah, I don't really want to look through every spell for the new spells, because there's 11 of them, and each are connected to a class feature. So I think rather than looking at them now, I'm going to look at the individual classes. So that's going to be up next. But like I said, I am really liking this idea of we're going to have 3 spell lists from Arcane, Divine, and Primal. Awesome. And then individual spell lists for the specific classes. I think that really simplifies some of the deep diving and stuff you've got to do in some of these books. So good job, whoever thought of that. In particular, like the Primal, I've always looked in my head for a way to describe kind of the third branch of magic in 5th ed. I don't know if it was described as Primal, and I just always missed it, but I really like that. And yeah, hopefully these new spells are rad, but we're going to look at them when we look at the classes. Where is my OBS? I'm going to hit stop recording on there, and we're going to go and we're going to start looking at some classes. So if you're catching this live, you'll see this all in one go, but if not, catch the next video. For some class